Hey guys, what's up? We're back with some more WarFrame action, and today I want to do a quick video giving some of my thoughts on the upcoming Titania rework that is actually coming soon, possibly this week, because the dev workshop actually showed up in the forums of WarFrame. So the devs have given us a brief overview of what's going to be happening to Titania and Nyx. I, for one, will not be talking about Nyx because I don't really play all that much, so I don't think I'm going to even give any opinion on it that's like even remotely informed. But let's just jump to the Titania one. So, Titania, her passive is not going to be changed. So right now the bullet jump trampoline thing, that's still going to be a thing that exists. I'm kind of disappointed that DE hasn't decided to do something about it, especially since Razor Wing exists. Like, generally speaking, I still think, that particular passive is not useful in the slightest. But, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what they do later on, but for the time being, they're not going to change it at all. They're also not going to change Spellbound, which is perfectly fine. Spellbound doesn't need to be changed in the slightest. It's perfectly fine ability. There's nothing you need to do to it. Alright, so the first ability they are going to change is Tribute. So, like I said, Tribute is an ability that takes up way too much energy because you need to cast it 4 times in order to just get one of the buffs, and you need to get all 4 of the buffs if you want to have a fully effective ability on your 2. As a result, it would take 16 casts in order to get all of those auras up to full strength, which is just stupid. So what are they doing? It only takes 4 casts in order to get your ability up to full strength, i.e. you only need to cast once to get the maximum aura effectiveness of that particular aura. So that's what's going to happen. That's fantastic. As for the 4 auras, they're going to keep Dust the way it is, so it reduces enemy accuracy by 50%. That's fine. They're going to increase the damage reflected back to the attacker through Thorns. That's the one, I think, if you... I can't remember. I think if you hit melee enemies, question mark. That increases to 50% of the damage reflected back to the attacker. Now, I think I, among many, recognize, and Brozon has actually said this quite a lot, that enemies tend to have their damage scale a lot slower than their health. As a direct result, like, damage reflected back to the attacker is usually not something that is, like, meaningful. You can tell by the fact that there's a massive discrepancy over, like, number-wise, the amount of damage that we do versus the amount of health that we have. So, just 50% of the damage reflected back to the attacker seems a bit pointless. I would argue that it should be 100% of the damage reflected back to the attacker, if not even 200% damage reflected back to the attacker. And it looks like D is fully aware that this is a discrepancy due to one of the changes to Nyx, actually, which is that it's something to do with her mind control, where, like, when you mind control someone, you can then shoot your weapons at it for 4 seconds, and all the damage that it absorbs after you shoot your weapons at it, it'll then, like, calculate into the damage output of that particular enemy. It just means that finally we'll have like an NPC enemy type that can do a lot of damage. So I think Thorns needs to be looked at a little bit more, maybe buffed to a point where it actually can kill something. Entangle is going to be exactly as it is. I agree with this. Having it slow every enemy by 25%, that's perfectly fine. Full Moon is actually the big one now. The 75% damage buff is going to be applied to all sorts of companions, including Razor Wing Butterflies. So for those who aren't fully aware, Razor Wing Butterflies do around about 80 damage per tick at base 100% strength at level 30, but I have no idea how many ticks of damage they do per second. They could do 10 ticks a second, they could do 5 ticks a second, they could be trash garbage and only do 1 tick a second. But for reference, if they happen to do 10 ticks a second at 80 damage a second, 80 damage a tick, sorry, and you get your full moon buff, you can do 140 damage, and if you happen to do 10 ticks a second, that actually is on par, if not that's actually on par and slightly better than a standard base unmodded Super Vandal. So that's not bad, but I don't know, it could be better. But they're not changing Razor Wing Butterflies for, spoiler alert, they're actually not changing that at all, so, I don't know. Lantern is the next ability that they are changing, in the sense that instead of just having one tethered enemy that kind of flies away, you'll now have you can now have up to 4 tethered enemies that can not fly away. They don't really fly away at all, so that's actually pretty good. You'll also be able to explode them, so for reference, it turns out that when you explode a target, you do 2,500 damage of some element, I don't know. So if you have 4 targets tethered around in like a bit of a cluster, and you have an entire room sort of shooting at you, or I guess in this case not shooting at you, you could potentially explode that and do 10,000 damage. That's pretty good. Outside of Grineer enemies with heavy armor, that's actually a pretty good, decent like amount of damage. And when you have some extra power strength, obviously when you have a standard intensity, that's 30% power strength, so you end up doing like 13,000 damage as opposed to 10,000 damage. So you know, that's what we're working with Lantern. And finally we have Razorwing. So Razorwing, the only change is that Razorwing gets a vacuum. So everyone gets a vacuum. Our pets have a vacuum, our mowers have a vacuum, our sentinels obviously have a vacuum, and now Razorwing has a vacuum. So that's very exciting indeed. So there is actually going to be some more information on Nyx and Titania. I'm not 100% sure what that is. There seems to be a note here that says the changes have felt pretty great in early testing, but of course it's something to change. Stay tuned for Fortuna Part 2 notes for full information on Nyx and Titania. I think Fortuna Part 2 will be coming very soon. Hopefully it also brings Melee 3.0. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be a thing. Oh no, it won't. Melee 3.0 is actually coming next year, so that's not going to be a thing. But Fortuna Part 2, I'm not sure if that's going to be the Orb Battles Part 2, or if Orb Battles are going to be part of Part 3, because I think the... not Steve, not Sheldon, I don't remember. One of the guys basically said that they're aiming for this year, this side of Christmas, so we'll see. We'll have to see. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, hit the like button. If you really enjoyed it, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. And as per usual, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Time to evacuate.
Bye!